Let's talk about sex in space. Let's talk about you in space. Let's talk about all the good times and the bad times that are in space. We're having a discussion about sex in space. Thank you, guys.
I'm so happy right now.
That was great.
I'm so happy.
Watch for her mixtape. It's coming out soon.
Oh, yeah,
It's
please.
fire.
I don't think so. The idea of sex in space isn't something that most people have probably thought of, at least in an official stance from NASA. Or maybe they have, but they haven't really come out with it.
Right.
So it's an interesting thing to think about. I mean, astronauts are on aboard the ISS for several months at a time. I mean, this must come up at some point. But how does this work in the dynamic of not only being in space, but being in a confined area and having this level of professionalism? And something might clog the instruments.
Oh, God.
No, that's a valid concern, man. That's a valid concern.
True.
But it's something that has been explored by several people, because if we're going to get to space colonization, if we're going to get to this place where we're sending people and they're going to be essentially on an arc for 20 years or something, and they're going to have to start a society out on a place with lesser gravity, or if they're going to have to start populating while in transit, yeah, you got to figure that out. I saw a study where these two scientists were basically had these sleeping bags that essentially zip together.
And you
so
have one sleeping bag.
Right.
you have,
So
like,
you're held in together.
Pupa of sex just floating around
It's like
the
a
fuselage.
It's like a sex burrito, or is there any other kind?
Oh. Yeah.
That's the reaction I was shooting for.
Right.
No, thank
But
you.
that's not even that far off when you think about the project.
Sex burritos?
Sex
I agree.
burritos?
It's my new
It's
band
just
name.
Chipotle. I know guacamole's extra. No. No, but when you have now the Mars 100, the 100 people that are being like whittled down for the first manned mission to Mars.
Yes.
And they're not coming back.
Right.
So you have to be ready for something like that. And do you cut out sex from your whole life
You
then?
can't cut it out from your life. I mean, it's part of the human experience, isn't
But-
it? And then, like, even for men, like, don't you get prostate
Yeah.
problems if you don't
Release.
release now and then?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing, too, is like, people were talking about, you know, why would you get birth control or have a vasectomy or something like that before you go on a mission to Mars? Because, like, can you imagine being that baby that accidentally happened and there's no one to take care of it?
Well, it's also
or,
like, how do you deal with the birth?
Yeah,
Like,
that's the same thing.
Someone
Yeah.
could die.
Or if it would outlast all of them and it's life and then
it's
there's no
alone.
one there. Yeah. It's so crazy to think about, and that
Until
could
the
just...
native Martians show up.
Yeah!
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Martian Manhunter.
Let's count on that happening.
John!
But there's, there's a lot of things to think of, like gravity, for one, pulling
Right.
people apart. Like, with reaction, there's opposite reaction. So when there is thrust, there is
You're immediately on the other side of the room.
You just gotta get creative with the wall, I think. and
Pretty
some
much.
handles.
I think this was this was allegedly attempted once, but later proved to be a hoax, where allegedly in this experiment, 2 astronauts were put in a microgravity tube, and they found it very sexually unappealing. This didn't actually happen.
Right.
This was a hoax. But there was also the instance of only time it's ever happened, 2 married astronauts who had secretly married before the mission, and by the time it came out, it was too late to replace them. So, they had a space honeymoon and talked about this particular room in the ISS where it's a beautiful view of Earth. Look at
Right.
these windows.
And they got divorced when they came back to
I
Earth.
know, the
which
magic
so
was
sad.
over.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is this something that needs to be studied more by NASA or other space agencies that are in the private sector as we get more and more close to sending people into space long term?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And how should we go about doing that?
As delicately and cleanly as possible. Cleanly as possible.
Yeah.
Well, there's also from a social aspect, there were in Antarctica, there were several pregnancies had, and they were thinking like, well, these are somewhat similar circumstances in that it's a very isolated, very moderate stress, and they found like the moderate stress level is okay. It's conducive to sex. If it's like spikes of high stress, acute or chronic, what have you,
Or if there's
that
a
makes it
bear.
more difficult. If a polar bear shows up and sticks his head through the window, that can
Right.
be very concerning.
Yeah.
That did not happen in any of these cases. We're just saying.
And I think the main issue is not whether or not 2 people can have sex in space, because life will find a way. But whether like the repercussions of it, like the social dynamic or getting it on the instruments or having a baby.
Also a human being born in zero gravity and how that's going to affect the bone
the muscles
growth.
atrophy.
Yeah, the muscles.
Oh no!
Because they don't know to exercise. That's a conscious decision that you have to make in zero gravity.
Wow, there are a lot of consequences to this.
Yeah.
None of them
baby.
seem great at all. Jelly babies, obviously.
Oh.
It's a bad idea. What do you think about the ideas of sex in space? And this is something we should pursue more aggressively. Let us know below. And I don't mean like sexually. I mean like the study, okay, of the social and physical effects of such. Let us know below in the comments, and please be sure to subscribe.